London this morning. So Stefania is on our sales engineering team in Europe. She's been speaking at a ton of events lately. So you were just at an Atlassian user meetup. Was it yesterday or 2 days ago?
It was last night in Germany.
Yeah, of course. Of course you were in Germany yesterday. So welcome jet lagged to, even though it's only an hour's difference, back to London. You're going to do some 5 lightning solutions with the Nexus platform for us. So Stefania has been great in posting some of her work online on videos and demos that she's done. So looking forward to this session. I know we ran a little late on the last one, so I'm just going to hand it over to you. You want to share your desktop, and so we can make sure that we can see that. Yep, I can see your slides.
Perfect.
I'm going to go off here, and we got your full slide view. So you're ready to go.
Ready to go. Thank you for that introduction, Derek. So I'm Stefania Chaplin. I'm a solutions engineer for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So I cross loads of different industries, different size companies, different countries, different languages. So I get to see a lot of Nexus in action. And I'm going to be presenting 5 lightning solutions on the Nexus platform. And you can also find me on Twitter at DevStepOps. So in terms of my presentation, it's quite short. There's just one slide because my presentation is going to be about 95% live demo, so fingers crossed. First, I'm going to look at using Docker in the Nexus repository, both proxy and hosted. Then I'm going to do the number 2 and 3 kind of in tandem. So first, I'm going to use the UI upload in the Nexus repository, and then demonstrate staging within the repository as well. And then I go on to using Ruby within our Nexus firewall product for both audit and quarantine. And finally, I'm going to look at a JavaScript bill of materials in the Nexus lifecycle. So first, let's start off with number 1. So Docker. Oops. So here I am in my Nexus repository. With the repository 3, some of the big differences that we came about were increasing language supports. You can see here Bower, JavaScript, Ruby, Node, etc. So for Docker, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it looks like to set up a repository. So I have a couple already. So you can see Docker proxy, internal, and all. It's very easy to set up. I just press create, and then I select the type of repository I want. For example, Docker proxy, I need to put in my remote storage, etc. So going back, I'm going to show you his 3 I made earlier. So if I look at Docker proxy, it's very simple. I set up my HTTPS. I want to say the kind of registry I'm going to, and just click save. Similarly, for internal, that's for my hosted 18082. The reason I'm mentioning these numbers now is they're going to be slightly relevant when I come to my demo. So I select that, tick some boxes, and press save. And then with the final one, Docker all, so this is my group, so 18075. And you can see it's for both my internal and my proxy. So now jumping into the live demo. So I've got a little Docker tab ready for demo. So first, just to show you my system is empty, Docker image is empty. Oh, I forgot to show you one thing. In my actual repositories, we looked at the setup, but actually if you look inside, Docker proxy is empty and Docker internal is empty. So jumping back here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to log in to my Docker proxy repository. So here is a command I made earlier. So this is my unique IP address, and then this is my group repository. So I'm going to log in with my top secret credentials. And here I am logged in. So next, I'm going to pull an image from that repository. So pull, and then /docker/whale. So it's getting the latest tag. You can see I've already got some of the layers here, and then it's downloaded the latest image. So when I go back to my Docker proxy, all of a sudden you can see it's populated with my whale. So what happens if I want to push in my local repository? So first I'm going to show you, I should have, all fingers crossed, you can see here's the whale say I just downloaded. So what I'm going to do is, if I get this command, I am going to tag this. So I'm going to tag, I'm going to select the image ID. And then I am going to change the port number, which is why I said it's important to look at the 75882. And I'm going to name it Stefania tag. So then I've just tagged this image. So the next thing I need to do is I need to log in. So in order to log in, I need to log into specifically that port. Oops. I need to do that without the image ID, of course. That was my mistake. Yet again, using my top secret credentials. And login has succeeded. So next, I'm going to push that tagged image. So get rid of the image ID, as I forgot to last time. And I am going to push. And you can see here, it's going through pushing this. And fingers crossed, this will show up in my Docker internal repository. So pushed and all done. So if I go back here, go to my Docker internal, and you can see yet again, my Docker whale say has been pushed to the repository manager. So obviously this has been, quite a, simple example. I've just been pushing and pulling, but obviously, if you're doing, containerization, it can be very, very valuable to do this within the Nexus repository manager. So next, I'm going to go to showing using the UI upload in Nexus repository. So it's very easy to use. As you can see on the right-hand side, I have a simple upload. So I'm going to be showcasing staging at the same time. And to do staging, I've got 3 example repositories, but I'm going to talk about them in just 1 second. Initially, I'm going to go to staging development. So I'm going to add a file. You can see here I've got my web container. It's a war. So bear with me. Oops. If I can type. org.webgoat, webgoat container, and then 7.0.1 upload. So this is a very easy way to upload into the system, whether you're uploading WAR files, jar files, or other components that aren't necessarily in the Java ecosystem. This functionality recently came out with 3.9. It's a very easy to use user interface for uploading the component. So that was number 2. Next, staging. So this kind of carries on from upload, because as you can see, I went into staging development. So staging enables the movement from components from one repository to the other, because what you may find is your developers will upload to staging dev, and then you might want to have your testers go in to test the application to see if it's vulnerable for anything, or just do testing in general. And then finally, when they're done with testing, then you might want to push it into a production repository. So you can see here at the bottom, I've got staging dev, staging test, and staging prod. When I go into browse, just to show you, well, they're not all empty, because staging dev, I have just got my webgoat container, so you can see here. Staging test, that is empty. And then staging prod is also empty. So the way that we demonstrate staging at the moment is through API calls. So if you go into the system configuration, you see API. So we have a really rich, and easy to use REST API call. So for example, you might have get tags. At the moment, let's try it out. I should not have any tags. And when I go into, put this in a new browser, I don't have any because I haven't set up my tags yet, but this is an example of how you could show them, and then you can do different things with them as well. So now on to my staging demo. I've set this up via Jenkins. This is for ease of use so that I have the kind of commands preset and I can run them. I'm going to show you the commands that I will be running as well, and also, how we can do it slightly differently if we have extra time. So my first job, I'm going to create a tag and associate the tag to the development repository. So that will associate with the web code we just had. Need to log in, obviously. And if I go to configure, at the moment, I'm just using my build job. I'm just using it as a shell step. So you can see here, I'm doing a curl command, going into my repository with the tags, and I'm adding this metadata. So another real benefit about staging is you can now add custom metadata to these tags. So for example, this tag is called webcode. It has a build number, a commit ID, and a build URL. So that could be the build report. If I had more time, I would obviously set up a Jenkins job to create a build and scan at time. But for now, I've hard-coded it, but it is possible to do it in the system. My second shell step, so what I'm doing here, it's just the end bit that is important. I'm associating the webgoat tag with the repository staging dev. So just so you know what's happening, I'm going to build now. And if I go to my output, so you can see here, I've created a tab webcode. It's also got the build URL. If I click on it, for example, it even goes straight to my report. So, how great is that? If I go back to Jenkins, whoops, you can see the next step, it's doing an association. So it's associating the webgoats with this tag. If I go back to, this was my URL for testing what tags I have in the system. You can now see I have a tag called webgoat and with it the enriched metadata. Just to be triple safe, I will show you as well in my repository. My staging dev is the web container is still there. If I go back to my project, back to dashboard, so what I'm going to do is move from the development repository to the test repository. This is just one shell step. And similarly, you can see move staging test tag webgoat. So let's go back into our, let's build that. And if we go to the console output, you can see move successful and it's gone to staging test. So to show that, here I am in staging dev, refresh. And you can see it's gone. But when I go into my staging test, here I have my webgoat container. Next, I'm going to go back to the dashboard and I've got move from test repository to production repository. And you've guessed it, I've got move, staging, production, tag, webgoat. So it's just a very simple, easy to use curl commands. And when I build it, you can see here, move successful to staging prod. If I go here similarly, now it will no longer be in staging test. However, when I go to staging prod, here I have my webgoat container. So this is awesome, but what happens, maybe there's a problem with this specific build and I'm like, okay, this can't go to production. I need to erase what I have so far. So if I go back to project, I've set up a fourth job, delete tag. If I look at the configurations, what I have here, staging, delete, tag equals webgoat. So obviously be very careful when you use these steps because it does do exactly what it says on the tin. If I go here, go to my console output, components, deleted, webgoat container, delete successful. And similarly, when I now refresh here, it will be gone. So that's how you use staging in the Nexus repository. Not finally. Next, I'm going to go on to Ruby Firewall. So the way that we configure Firewall, there's a couple of easy steps. So if you go, first you have to go to IQ Server, and here I have my IQ Server linked. Then we add a capability. So I've actually got mine set up already. But if I go to settings, you need to do three things. enable this capability, select which repositories, you can see I've got a couple, and then enable quarantine, because Firewall has two aspects, audit and quarantine. So what quarantine means is if you're trying to download a component for the first time and it violates a policy, say it has a really high CVSS, what this means is it will stop at that point and will act as a form of ingress control. So let's check it out. If I go to my second tab, Ruby Firewall, I'm going to download a component called gem install yard version 0.9.1, because I know this one is actually vulnerable. When I try, what happens? There's an error while executing. Requested item is quarantined. So that's not great. Let's see what that looks like. If I go back into my repository, you can see here my Ruby gem proxy, and we have this kind of quarantine symbol here. So if I click on it, I need to just log in. And what we have here is a repository bill of materials. So here I have every single Ruby gem that I've ever tried to download, and you can see most of them have no violations, but there are also some with some serious problems. And you can even see one quarantined component. When I go to quarantined, I can click in here and I can get even more information. So I can see, the coordinates, so name, platform, and version, information around licensing, and also around these kind of security threats as well. I can also use this slider, so I'm on 0.9.1. If I go to say 0.9.4, all of a sudden my security threats and policy threats disappear. So this is great. This is the version that I want to use, so I could then make a request for yard 0.9.14. On this version, there are two security issues. So that's where Sonatype really add value, because we have a team of 65 data researchers taking a total of 78 feeds. And for each component, we'll add enriched metadata. So you can see, for example, if we have a look here, we give you an explanation. So we're saying the jQuery package is valuable to cross-site scripting. We'll give you detection guidelines, so the application is vulnerable by using this component, and also a recommendation. So in this instance, we recommend upgrading to a version of this component that is not vulnerable. So in this example, it would be 0.9.14. We'll always show our working as well. So what if I decide that 0.9.1, hey, I want to let it in, it's okay. So you can see here the policies it's violated and proxy failed. That's the firewall product. Maybe I want to waive. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to let it in this repository, this component. So once I waive, I can also release the quarantine. So what that means is it will then go, you can see 0 quarantined components, and then it will be back inside my repository. So my developers will be able to use this. I can show this by trying to download it again. Okay, so I've got permission denied. I think that's a logging in issue. So this has been Ruby Firewall Audit and Quarantine. So finally, I'm going to show you a JavaScript bill of materials in Nexus Lifecycle. So if I go into organizations and policy, I'm going to look at my JavaScript team, and I have OWASP Juice Shop. So I'm going to pray the internet is on my side. What I've done, OWASP Juice Shop is an intentionally vulnerable JavaScript application. I've downloaded it, I've taken the node modules, and I've turned them into a zip file. And what I'm going to do is I'm uploading it to the system. So this is functionality within Lifecycle. So you can either integrate within the IDE or within the CI tool or in the CD. What I'm doing in this example is I've just uploaded the zip file, or you could upload a WAR for Java, for example. What it's doing is it's taking cryptographic hashes of the binary dependencies. It's then matching those hashes with our Sonatype data services, and then it's returning the enriched metadata and evaluating against the policies that your company sets. For example, you can see a couple of them below to do with licensing, security, or architecture. So with JavaScript, as it is a very, rich ecosystem, there are a lot of components. I believe this report has, I think over 8,000. So that's why it's taking, a little bit long. But actually, if you think of this in the scheme of things, it's actually incredibly quick because all it is doing is matching against the cryptographic hashes of the binary dependencies. So hopefully this report should be here any second. So I'll play some elevator music whilst I wait. Okay, maybe it's this internet connection. What exactly is happening in terms of with JavaScript is the way that we check our JavaScript is to do with, I'm not sure if you guys have ever used, or guys or gals have ever used jQuery, but it is a very, there are over 72,000 versions of jQuery. So how are you supposed to know, what version that you are using with that many out there? So what we do with our cryptographic hash-based matching is we try to give you as much information as possible. You can see here, we're kind of evaluating the policy. So I'm just going to try and close this. I'm going to look at a report that I made earlier. So you can see here, if I go to my report and it's loading. So that's why it was taking a little long and I got impatient. It's analyzing nearly 9,000 components. And you can see that there are a lot of security alerts and licensing. When I go into policy violations, you can even see, for example, the file name it's in, as I mentioned about jQuery. Oops. You can see there are many, many different versions of files. What's quite interesting is actually there was an error that we found with this component, sanitize HTML. And this is why I mentioned our data team before, because if you go to the vulnerabilities, yet again, it is a cross-site scripting, but the only source of this data is within GitHub. And if I go here, you can see exactly where this person who owns this project referenced this OWASP attack. It's nowhere else to be found. You can also get information, for example, around policy, licenses, policies, or looking at the component info. And yet again, I can see if I go on 1.52, you can see that that would be, for example, a good version to use. If I have a look here, for example, I think it's one of these. You can also look at the occurrences. You can see here node modules, node modules, node modules. With JavaScript, we do find there are a lot of transitive dependencies. So we are able to map that down because, for example, as you can see, this is a transitive dependency, but it has a CVSS of 9, and it is a vulnerable component. So we've had a look just now at using Docker, using the UI upload and staging, looking at Ruby and JavaScript. So I want to thank you all for listening. I'm going to be on Slack if you want to continue the discussion. And you can also find me on Twitter at DevStevOps. So thanks for listening.
Stefania, that was great. Thank you so much. Amazing to run through 5 quick demos online, even with the internet not fully cooperating all the time. So yeah, definitely appreciate what everyone has tried live with demos.
Yeah, actually in the office, my lights switched off halfway through the demo, but I was like, it's fine. I'm just gonna roll with this. I can demo, so I'm slightly darker now.
She's demoing in the dark, folks.
Demoing in the dark.
So some great, we'll definitely take the session here and we can split it up into individual demos that you did. So the staging demo was very cool to see how you move from dev test to prod using that and how simple it was. The Ruby firewall demo was definitely very cool and easy to see, quick to understand. Unfortunately, the internet connection didn't cooperate as well in the JavaScript bill of materials, but it was cool to see that anyway, and just kind of see the insides of the product. Stefania, do you want to talk? It looks like we have a minute before the next session starts. Women at Sonatype and the stuff that you're doing there. You're speaking at the Silicon Roundabout.
Yeah. So I'm really excited about that because I know in America you have Silicon Valley. So in London, we call it Silicon Roundabout, which is the area near the city. It's Old Street. It's a roundabout. So I'm going to be talking about DevSecOps at that event. And for me personally, it's a really passionate area for me. Women at Sonatype. I think I remember talking with you in January when I was starting to found it, and now talking at events about it and using it as a recruitment push, being in touch with marketing. So, I'm always really looking to meet, women. I'm actually going to be talking at a meetup, Women in DevOps in London. So, if there are any women out there listening, please get in touch because I'd love to hear from you.